We are going to go over 3 problems today on how to add and subtract rational expressions. We are going to keep our denominator in its factored form, and we're also going to assume that no denominators are going to equal 0. So make sure you are ready to go. Have a scratch piece of paper, your journal, whatever you're doing your work on. We're going to go ahead and do this step by step. Take your time. Going to start out by writing this trinomial, which is x squared minus 14x plus 33 all over x squared minus 6x minus 55. Make sure I put the minus sign right there. 5 over 3x squared plus 15x. Now I'm going to highlight each of these in a different color. I'm going to put this one in blue, this one in red. Let's go green. Alright, so we're going to factor each of these individually. So, in blue right now, this one's pretty easy. We've got to look for 2 numbers that add up together to equal negative 14, but those exact same 2 numbers multiply together to equal a positive 33. And when you guys start thinking about how to factor, always think of your products or your factors, not your sums, okay? Because we have a limited number of factors. The only numbers I can think of are 3 times 11 and 33 times 1. Well, I can get a 3 and an 11 to a 14, but I got to make it a negative 3 and a negative 11. Sorry, negative 3, negative 11, negative 3, negative 11. Alright, so this factors, I'm going to put it right up here. This factors to x minus 11 and x minus 3, because these add up to negative 14, but they multiply together to equal positive 33. Now we go to the red one here, looking for 2 numbers that add up together to equal negative 6, but 2 numbers that multiply together to equal negative 55. All right. Now, those 2 numbers, all right, looks like, hey, you know what? Looks like those numbers are also going to be, we got an 11 and a 5, right? Except we got to make it at what? Negative 6. So it looks like I'm going to have to make the negative 11 and a positive 5 and negative 11 and positive 5. So this factors to x minus 11 and x plus 5. Right? Ooh, that's going to make it a little bit nicer. We're going to be able to cancel those out, which would make our problem a heck of a lot easier. And last, right here, what we're going to do is we are going to factor out 3 and an x, and that's going to leave us with an x plus 5. Because 3x times x is 3x squared, and 3x times 5 is 15x. So that's the first thing I always do. I always try to factor everything and see if there's any common factors that we can cancel out. Because right now, I'm taking these guys out. That cancels that out, and I'm going to rewrite what we have left. Now, our problem's a little bit easier. We have x minus 3 all over x plus 5 minus, and I'm going to leave it in factored form. We have a 3x and an x plus 5, and then there's a 5 on top right here. And this is a little bit easier to work with. Now, one thing we need to think about when we're doing this is we got to make sure we have what's called the least common multiple, or the common denominator that we're going to use. So what's the least common multiple between this and this? So, you see how they share an x plus 5? So they already shared the x plus 5. So really, all I need to do for my least common multiple, I'm going to write it over here, my least common multiple is going to be 3x times x plus 5. This is going to be my common denominator. That's what I'm going to use for my final answer right in here. That's going to be one of the things I'm going to have. I'm going to have 3x and an x plus 5 for my common denominator. All right, so this has both of them. This one's missing something. Looks like it needs a 3x. So we're going to take this right here, and we're going to multiply it by 3x and a 3x. All right, so what are we going to do? We're going to distribute that. And so here's what we have. We put equals right here. We've got a 3x times an x, which is a 3x squared. And 3x times negative 3 is negative 9x. And then we have what? Minus 5. So I'm just going to put minus 5 all over 3x times x plus 5. There we have it. And that's what I'm going to type into the Khan Academy right here. I'm going to put 3x squared minus 9x minus 5. Because I don't think there's anything, I can't really factor this out. I got to put a 1 or a 5 here. If I put a 5 here and a 1, that's not going to work. 5 here and a 1. So this isn't going to be factorable. So I'm just going to leave it as so, and we'll see what happens. All right, we'll just see what happens. So I'll make a little fraction here, put my denominator in, which is a 3x, parentheses x plus 5, because it says I can leave it in factored form. And 3x squared minus 9x minus 5. 3x squared minus 9x minus 5. Just double check. 3x squared minus 9x minus 5. I think I typed in everything the way I want it. All right, good check. Woohoo, got it. If you mess up, you can see step-by-step solution and see where you made a mistake. Let's go ahead to the next one. All right, let's add these together. All right, this one's going to be a heck of a lot easier than the last one. Whoa, that was ugly. Here we go. All right, here's our denominators right here. Just going to write them nice and neat. Got a 3z plus 1 over. I don't like z's. Why do they use z's? Z's, put a little slash in the middle just because I don't want you to think they're 2's. All right, plus, there we go. Got an 11 over 15z squared. All right, so here we go. What we're going to do is going to highlight this denominator in blue, this one in red. We're going to find what's called the least common multiple between these two guys, which will help us find a common denominator. And then we'll add these fractions together. So, what number goes into a 15 and a 25? I'm going to venture to say 5. And what goes into a z squared and a z? Just one z. And when we factor that out, we have a 3z minus 5. And over here, our denominator is clear. That's my dog, Scout. She's letting me know that she needs something in her bowl. It's not time yet. We still have another hour before it's time. 15z squared. All right, so what we're going to do right now is we're going to find what's called the least common multiple. Now, the least common multiple between a 5 and a 15 is 15. And the least common multiple between a z and a z squared is z squared. And then we have to add one more little thing. We got to add this binomial, 3z minus 5. This is what's going to be in the denominator. So I'm just going to rewrite it. Not rewrite it. I'm just going to pre-write it. That's what I wanted to say. 15z squared, parentheses, 3z minus 5. All right, that's the least common multiple that we're going to have as our common denominator. All right, so let's go and write everything in its factored form. So we have 3z plus 1. And then over here we've got 5z. And then we have a 3z minus 5. Little plus. plus over here. We've got 15z squared, and here we have an 11. So let's think about what we have and what we're missing. It looks like we have, we need one more. We need one more z. See this right here, we got a z, that has a z squared, so it looks like I need one more z right here. Alright, that should suffice. Alright. And over here on this one, it has the 15. It has the z squared. Hold on, we need one more thing. We need a 3. There we go. Because 15 times 3 is 45, so now we've got a 3 times a 5 times a 3, that's 45, so we're good on this side. Over here, let's think about what we need. It looks like we need to have a 3z minus 5 here, and a 3z minus 5 here. There we go. So let's kind of check our work here. All right, here's our least common multiple, which is 15z squared. And so if I multiply 3z times 5z, that gives me the 15z squared. All right. Here I already have the 15z squared. I just needed the 3z minus 5, so I can clearly say I have 3z minus 5. So once we're done with that, all we have to do is we need to distribute. So we're going to distribute right here. And 3z times 3z is 9z squared, and 3z times 1 is 3z. 11 times 3z is a positive 33z, and 11 times a negative 5 is negative 55. Now that's going to be all over the common denominator, which is 15z squared, parentheses 3z minus 5. Now, if you're not sure how we got this denominator right here, if you're not sure, like, how did we get this? Let's go ahead and take a look at our factored form. All right, so let's look at our factors. Here we have a factor of 5z. All right. Here we have a factor of 3z minus 5. And then right here we have a factor of 15z squared. We have a term, a monomial, 15z squared. So what we have to do is we got to find the least common multiple between all of these. Let's go ahead and break it down right here. We got a 5 times a z times a 3z minus 5, a binomial, times a 3 times a 5 times a z times a z. All right. So when you're trying to figure out, like, what do you need? We got to have a 3. We got to have a 5, which gives us the 15. And we definitely have to have a z squared, okay, which gives us the z squared. And then the last but not least, we got to have this 3z minus 5. And by putting it all together, we get this as our least common multiple. So once you find that, all we got to do now is just add our like terms together. So the only like terms that I see that we can add together are this 3z and this plus 33z. And that's going to give us a total of 36z. All right? So here is going to be our final answer. We're going to put 9z squared plus 36z minus 55 all over. We're just going to leave it in factored form. We're not going to expand it because it didn't ask us to. We're just going to leave it in factored form. All right, that's what I'm going to type into the Khan Academy. All right, here we go. I'm going to keep it in factored form. All right, so I'm going to put 15z squared, 3z minus 5. All right, 15z squared, 3z minus 5, 9z squared. 9z squared. And then I believe it was plus 36z minus 55. All right. Take one quick last look. 9z squared. Yep. Looks like it's all looking good. All right. Let's go do one last problem. Ooh, this is a good one to finish on. All right, what we're going to do to start this problem, we're going to go ahead and I'm going to factor this. I'm going to factor this. I'm going to factor this. And last but not least, I'm going to factor this guy. So we're going to get them all in factored form. So what's common between a 15 and a 20? That number is 5. So I'm going to put 5 parentheses. I'm going to put 3x plus 4 all over. And right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a 3x and an x. And then what we have to do is we've got to think about the factors of 28. The only factors of 3 are 3 and 1. That's why I have a 3x and an x. But what are the factors of 28? We could use a 28 and a 1. We could use a 14 and a 2. We could also use a 7 and a 4. So just remember, when you're factoring, it's very important that you understand the outside products and the inside products are going to get us that negative 17x. One of these is going to be positive and one of them is going to be negative. So when I factor it, I'm going to put minus 7 here. I'm going to put plus 4 here. And this is where you have to really understand the FOIL method when you're factoring. Because when I multiply 3x times a negative 7, all right, that's negative 21x. And when I multiply 4 times x, that's a total of 4x. And when you add those together, you get negative 17x, which is what we need in the middle. So I know I factored this correctly, okay? And that's really going to help us in this particular problem because do you see this 3x plus 4 and this 3x? I'm going to be able to cancel those out. And I would not have known that I could do that if I didn't know how to factor. Right? So I'm going to put plus. Now, what's common between a 3 and a 6? The only number that's divisible into both is 3. So put 3, put x minus 2. 3 times x is 3x, and 3 times negative 2 is negative 6. And on this one, we are going to divide everything by 10 and an x. So here's what I'm going to do real quick. I'm going to put a 10 and an x. And then this is going to leave this as x squared plus 5x minus 14. So just by factoring out the number 10, which is divisible into 10 and a 50 and a negative 140, and knowing that I can pull out an x out of each of those terms, that makes things a heck of a lot easier. So I'm going to put a 10x, and then I'm going to factor this guy right here. There's the 10x, but I'm also going to factor this. Well, how do we factor x squared plus 5x minus 14? Once again, same pattern. We're looking for two numbers that add together to equal 5. And those exact same two numbers multiply together to equal negative 14. Once again, where do we start in this process? Start with the factors of 14. What are the only factors of 14? Hopefully you know 14 times 1 and 7 times 2. Alright, so we're going to use the 7 and the 2 in this particular problem because if I put a 7 here and a minus 2 and a 7 and a minus 2, 7 plus negative 2 is 5. And 7 times negative 2 is negative 14, which gives me my factors of x plus 7 and x minus 2. Now I have everything completely factored. And this is going to be awesome because I can totally see what I can cancel out. Check this out. Goodbye, 3x plus 4 over 3x plus 4. That cancels 2 and 1. Say goodbye to my little friend. X minus 2 over x minus 2. Those are also canceled out. So let's kind of think about right now. What do we have left standing that we have to worry about? Well, in the numerator, it looks like all I have left is the number 5. And in the denominator, all I have left is x minus 7. Over here, all I have left in the numerator is the number 3. And in the denominator, it looks like I have a 10x and an x plus 7. So now what we have to do is we got to find the least common multiple between an x minus 7, a 10x, and an x plus 7. Well, it's very easy. It's just all of those multiply together. Our least common multiple is going to be x minus 7 times x plus 7 times 10x. I'm going to put the 10x up front at the end. So here we go. I'm going to put equals. Here's going to be our final answer. We're going to leave it in factored form. By the way, all of you who are leaving all of your answers in expanded form, it's unfortunate, but I understand some of you have to use photomath to do this. But if you leave it in factored form, I know you actually did it without any assistance. All right, so here's going to be our least common multiple that I'm going to put at the very, very, very end. Let's look over here. Let's think about what do we need to multiply this by. It has an x minus 7. It needs a 10x. And it also needs an x plus 7, which is 10x squared plus 70x. And we are going to multiply 5 to both of those. It's going to be some big numbers. Over here, we have a 10x. We have an x plus 7. But what do we need? We need this x minus 7. So I'm going to take this 3 and multiply that to both of the terms. All right, so here we go. Let's do 5 times 10x squared and give us 50x squared. Let's do 5 times 70x and give us 350x. Let's do 3 times x and add another 3x. And then 3 times negative 7, which is minus 21. And then all I have to do now is add my like terms together, which are right here. All right, so let's see what we got. Looks like we have 50x squared plus 353x minus 21 all over 10x, x minus 7, and x plus 7. And that is what I am going to type in carefully and neatly into the Khan Academy. So here we go. Let's take our denominator. We'll go ahead and start out with that first. Make a little fraction here. Put a 10x, parentheses, x plus 7, x minus 7. All right. And then we got 50x squared. 50x squared. I think it was plus 353x. 353x. And last, and a minus 21. So there we go. We got this trinomial over these factors. Remember, it says you may keep the denominator in its factored form. That's why I'm keeping the denominator in its factored form and not expanding it. All right, hopefully we did everything right. If not, they'll let us know. And if I get it wrong, I'll show you where I messed up. We'll figure it out. But I didn't mess up. I did everything correctly. Once again, the numbers will change. But just remember, the process will remain the same. You're like, what's the process? I totally forgot. Well, first thing you got to do is you got to factor. You got to cancel out some common factors right here, all right, which allows you to find your least common multiple. And remember, the least common multiple was 10x, x plus 7, and x minus 7. Then you had to figure out, this one had the x minus 7, but it needed the other two. And this one had the 10x and the x plus 7, but it needed the x minus 7. And then you had to multiply using the distributive property, and add like terms, and then you get all of this. So, hope you have a good day, and good luck.